Welcome to Lightworks. Join us as we share stories of God's grace, stories of healing and transformation, stories of compassion, forgiveness, and reconciliation, stories of God's presence in our lives. Lightworks.
Good morning and welcome to Lightworks. Today we're going to talk about hospice care. More and more often, as individuals near the end of life, they and their family members consider the option of hospice. But many myths still abound. Some people think that you only bring in hospice for the very last days, or even that you bring in hospice when you want someone to die, hoping that hospice will sort of hurry things along. So why do hospice workers say that it's really about living, not about dying? We'll pose that question to our guest for today, Nadine Condon. Nadine was well known in the Bay Area for many years as San Francisco's godmother of rock and roll. A few years ago, this respected music business personality switched gears and found her next heart's true calling as a hospice professional. Welcome, Nadine, and thank you so much for joining us. So why do hospice people say it's about the living and not about the dying?
Because, you know, Melanie, we live until our very last breath. And just because a person might get a terminal diagnosis or find that their disease might be winning, it doesn't mean that their life is over. They have a full, final chapter of living yet to do. And so all of us hospice professionals find that this is one of the most rewarding times in a person's life because it can be so rich with meaning and so deep in meaning.
So how is hospice different than curative care, than what I might find from my Aunt Bessie in the hospital if I just said, do everything, save her, extend her life as long as possible?
You know, hospice is a fabulous form of full person care. And what makes it different from other medical care is that you get medical care, but you also get a team of professionals working on your behalf in multiple disciplines to also address not only your medical issues and your pain and your symptom management, but they can also help you address your emotional issues, your spiritual issues, your family issues. And in hospice care, it's not only the patient, but it's also the family that is considered in the plan of care. Because we know someone's dying and your loved one's dying does not just affect the patient, it also affects the family. So the family is as involved. And in hospice care, we don't take over. Your medical doctor, your primary physician remains in charge of your care, and we work as collaborators with your primary physician to devise the best plan of care possible. Now, many people think hospice is giving up, and it's anything but giving up, because really there's a time when you're fighting a disease and you're trying chemotherapy and radiation, and at some point the disease might start to win. That's not a time to despair. It's a time to take stock of the situation and say, what do I want to do with the time remaining, with the time I have left? So instead of subjecting yourself to possibly further medical treatments that might cause you more anguish and be more time-consuming and be harder on your family, you yourself can decide to go for hospice care, which is palliative care. And palliate is a word that means comfort care. So to make the last chapter of your life as meaningful as possible, we offer palliative care, which very specifically addresses your pain symptoms and things like nausea or constipation, because we know you can have a good quality of life for this magnificent final chapter with your family and your loved ones if you're feeling sick, if you have terrible pain. So we're experts. Hospice is experts in pain management and symptom control. And when you don't have to fear that you're going to be in pain or that you're going to be nauseous when you eat, then you actually can spend time reflecting on your life, reconciling with your family, taking stock of everything you've met in this huge continuum of life that we've been so blessed with.
Wow. Wow. You make it sound like we should rush to this stage. I think I'll take a little bit of time. So some people think that in addition to the it's giving up, that you call hospice when you think Aunt Bessie is ready to die because you sort of want her to die. And those pain medications that you're talking about is really a way of hospice killing Aunt Bessie.
You know, there are many misconceptions about hospice because people don't like to talk about death and dying. It's way too scary, and we know that death might be catching, and we don't want to catch it.
Right.
But the fact remains that that these hospice neither hastens death nor prolongs life. What it does is supports you so that your death can be the natural process that it is. You see, we live, we die. This is part of that wonderful cycle of life, but you have to have death at the other end of it. And because of that,
So you're not going to kill me. You're not going to speed up my death with hospice care.
We don't believe in any euthanasia. Hospice is not euthanasia. And the drugs that we use are drugs for comfort and palliation. And what people don't understand is the myth of morphine and drugs like morphine.
That's the myth I want you to bust.
Well, you know, pain, people are very afraid of pain. And when people have serious diseases like cancers, pain can be a very debilitating factor. But morphine, and actually I would prefer to call them the opioids, and drugs that are derived from the natural source of the opioid family, which is a natural resource for medication, and they can be very effective in not only pain control, but also symptom control, like when you're having trouble breathing. Now, the reason that people get so confused, they think that hospice might be killing Aunt Bessie, is because people wait too long to come into hospice. And the reason people wait too long is they do not want to disappoint their family, because they do not want their family to think they're giving up and they don't love them. But you know, in working for the past 8 years with hospice patients, I have found that the person that is sick knows when it's time. And they know how they want to refocus their energies from going to chemotherapy and radiation to spending more time with their family, or taping their memoirs, or planning that last trip with their wife. Things in that ilk, instead of like spending all their energies going the other way. So we don't hasten and we don't prolong. We're there to support life taking its natural course all the way to the end, because you live all the way to your very last breath.
So what got you personally involved in hospice? Why, especially the switch from rock and roll, which was your entire life for a long time, to...
You know, sometimes it's a miracle. Sometimes I call these things little miracles in our lives. And I experienced one of those little miracles. I'd been very happy in my music business career. I'd been partying with Elton John. I had been going around 3 continents with limousines and parties. But one day, I saw on my church bulletin board a little notice that said, hospice volunteers wanted, and there was a date and a time. And I marked it in my calendar, and as the date approached, I thought, I don't know why I'm going to this event. And I drove there white-knuckled like everyone would do, going, why am I called to this death cult called hospice? Because I didn't know anything about hospice. And the minute I walked in the room with all these wonderful volunteers and people that wanted to just be kind and serve their neighbor, and serve their fellow community member, and serve their loved ones, and your loved one and my loved ones, because our families are so splintered now, I knew immediately I was at home, and it was a wonderful feeling. I'm also sure I went to help myself recover from the loss of my own mother. My mother died of congestive heart failure, which is a very hard disease to watch because you have trouble breathing and it gets